Welcome to Empire Building. I'm Wendy Papazan, and together with my 4 co-hosts, we bring you weekly unfiltered conversations about leadership, growing a big empire, and living on your own terms.
I'm Kimber Levitt-Keaty. We are investors and wealth builders with over $75 million in combined net worth.
I'm Sarah Reynolds. We are visionaries who built more than 50 businesses with over $122 million in annual revenue.
I'm Tiffany Fikes. We've led thousands of people and do it all while being pretty good moms.
And I'm Seychelle Van Poole. We are your podcast to learn how to build big businesses and even bigger lives.
Hi, amazing listeners, and welcome to a new week and new Monday here for Empire Building. I am so excited to have with me today recording my amazing, beautiful, smart friends, Tiffany and Seychelle. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Have y'all felt like this last month has been like 4 years, like of just like packed in? I feel like it has been so fast and insane and amazing and crazy. Have y'all felt that way?
Yes.
I'm just excited to be in the warmth.
Me too.
That's completely fair. I am not ready for the warmth because that means in Texas it's not going to stop.
I was going to say, you don't get a break. Like once it starts, it goes bad real quick.
We've already hit 93 and I would like to unsubscribe from that.
Wow.
So.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
Last year didn't hit 90s till June, so we're early this year.
Oh,
So.
okay. Well, I'm just excited to get rid of all my paleness and have sun time. And so just with warmth and it's going to be a great next few months. And I'm super excited for today's episode. So we are continuing our scaling series. So we have already talked about what you need to know, right, before you scale. So if you did not listen to that, I would highly recommend you listen to that. And then we also talked about people and hiring for scale. And today we are going to dive into systems. So the systems that saved us scaling your back end operations team and systems without breaking. Have you guys ever had a moment where you thought you had it all together and then with some kind of system or checklist, and then you find out, oh, I was totally wrong on that one?
Joshua, my husband, when we would go on vacation, everybody would realize, oh, wait, Joshua just does all this stuff and nobody knows what he's doing. And so like when a person goes on vacation, sometimes you find the holes they've been filling with their fingers that the system does not take care of.
True.
I think
So
that's such
true.
a good point. And like, I think it's so true too for like anytime you have a baby or an illness or like any of those things, right? Like I think that's where your holes get exposed. So I love that, Tiff. I think it's spot on. And I'm really excited that we're talking about this today because it's such a crucial component of the linchpin of growth and creating those flywheels. So it's a much needed topic that we are going over today.
Well, and people often don't think this is important. They think, oh, hiring, that's how you scale. And, getting more business, that's how you scale. But the reality is, if you don't get this in place, you're going to scale and crash and burn. So.
Yes. That is such a good point. Well, and like, I think about it too, where we hear all the time, like you need more leads, you need, right? Like more sales, like that without this part of the system, you're right. You're just going to burn yourself to the ground.
I think what happens is that when you do throw more people, right, at the problems, at growth, right, and I think we've all made that mistake before, you do end up continuing to grow. But what happens is that everything feels harder versus easier. And I think a lot of people run from scaling or growth because they feel like that's going to be harder. But when you can get your systems down, you can actually make growth a lot easier, right? And so like, I know that I've had like so many like missed follow-ups before when the system doesn't work the way it's supposed to be, right? Inconsistent client experiences many times will show you that you don't yet have the operations set up for growth, for scale, right? Team confusion, like who's doing what? And when I started seeing those things happen, right, balls being dropped on follow-up, inconsistent client experiences, and then confusion of the team, what it made me realize is that we don't actually have a growth problem, we have a systems problem. And the reality is like most of us entrepreneurs, empire builders, we don't love this topic, okay? Because it's not that sexy. It's not that fun. And it's crucial though, for growth and growth for the big life as well as the big business, for sure.
As soon as you said, like, most entrepreneurs don't love this, I immediately thought it's not sexy. And you said it like right then. And it's so true. The other thing I think about too is a lot of entrepreneurs are chaos agents. And we're good in the messy. We're good at powering through the hard. We like the startup, the build, the like excitement of all of that. And what scaling with systems requires is discipline. It requires quiet. It requires success through the boring, and almost sometimes feeling like it's the mundane, but it's that part that literally builds the stairs for the scale. And that's, I think, the part that a lot of people don't like think that they love until they really experience what success through that can look like.
Well, and it feels like you have to slow down. At the end of the day, I really think that's why entrepreneurs don't love this, because you got to stop running if you're going to build something that's going to be run on by other people. And so we've got to be, I mean, we had an episode a few months ago about the long game. Like, this step in scaling is the long game. You're setting yourself up to have a business that will work without you in the future, but you got to stop being fast right this second to build this thing up so that it can run faster than you could ever run on your own.
And I think too, with that, Tiffany, that's so smart. And then also when I think about it, like, so many leaders, right? Entrepreneurs, business owners, they get so much of their significance from being needed, right? From like, I hold it all together. I've had so many conversations with people and, you know, they went on vacation and things fell apart and they are like happy about it. And I'm like, what? And because they get so much of their meaning for their life, for their career from holding it all together. But you can't grow something if you're the one holding it all together. Like, if you're working in your business day to day, right? And you're the one that's holding it together, just like Joshua, right? That story about Joshua. Okay, that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to scale. And so it's got to be, right, a business that works without you, which is what Tiffany is saying.
Well, I'm excited for us to jump in. Tiffany, do you want to kick us off with one of the core concepts that we need to know as we jump into this?
So before we started recording, we were talking about the E-Myth Revisited book. We've all read it. And this is the concept, is this. And so when you think about your business, I want you to think you're not just running a business, you're building a model. So stop building a business that you work in. And the only way you can build a business that works without you, like Sarah was saying, is if you build a model that can be duplicated and understood. On our team, we always, I don't know, this had to be somebody heard it, but they were like, if you get hit by a beer truck on your way home from work, can this team go without you? Will your clients still get served? And then they got really uncomfortable and they're like, we're going to make it an ice cream truck so it's a little bit happier. I was like, I don't think it's happier to get killed by an ice cream truck or run over by an ice cream truck. But that's the concept of, like, is it duplicatable? Does somebody else know how to step right into whatever that you're building? Because a lot of us are personality-driven businesses. And if your personality gets hit by an ice cream truck, nobody else can step into that. So you've got to think about, what is the kind of business you're building?
So the first core concept, right, is like, you've got to be able to duplicate it, right? It's got to be duplicatable. It's got to be a system that works with or without you, right? You can still fulfill part of a role, right, in your organization. And could someone else fill in when you're on vacation? Is everything, right, documented, right? So core ID number 2, right, that we want to talk about with scaling your ops is that you must have one clear way of doing everything. And this is hard.
It's so hard.
That is hard.
Out of all of our core concepts we're going to talk about today, I just have to tell you guys, like, this is my hardest one. And this is the one that my team and I get into pretty big discussions about, because in real estate, there's so much gray, right? And so much depends on, like, what the client is needing or what the client is wanting. And, you know, my ops leaders are constantly telling me, like, well, we can't do it 15 different ways across 10 different locations. We've got 54 listings launching this week, right? And you're asking us to do it 50 different ways. Like that, we can't do that. We have to have, this is what we do. So many times people think, right, that they think about their best day of getting something done, or that they rise to that, right? If only I could like repeat my best day every single day, right? But really what happens is we fall to our systems, like, and you will fail to your systems. Almost every level of your business will fail to what you have systematized or what you don't have systematized, right? So like every function of your business needs two things, okay? It needs a defined process. So this is how we put a house on the market, right? Every single step, like a defined process, right? And then it needs a repeatable standard. Like what's the standard for timing on how long something should take? What's the expectation of when does it get passed to the next person? Like all of those things, every key function needs defined process and then a repeatable standard to where at any point your team knows how to win.
I think that's key. And the other piece that I realized too was a clear understanding of why we're doing it. I had a moment this last week where we were talking about even just like a listing intake form that the ops team created. And one of the agents said, yeah, I don't really use it that much. And I had to like hold my face from saying what my face was wanting to think, to be like, why do you think we have that form? And they were like, well, it doesn't really benefit me. And I was like, well, who do you give the form to? Right. And they're like, well, I would give it to the operations person. And I was like, do you think maybe that form is for the operations person and maybe not for you? Right. Like, so I realized very quickly, I was like, we're obviously missing the why behind the system and why it works. And so we had to go back and walk through this even just on our own team this last week. But right, every one of these processes needs to have a step-by-step process. Like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And who's responsible for it, right? Who's responsible and accountable for getting it in? And Sarah, you said this for the episode, and I think it's so good, right? If everybody owns it, no one owns it.
Yeah.
It's crucial.
Say's going into that second concept, another concept right here about scaling, which is so critical. But it's like having before that, right? Having your way that's defined, which is what Seychelle was describing, and then not just having your way, having the why. Everyone is understanding the why, because clarity will remove the chaos. If everyone knows, okay, how leads are followed up with, how clients are communicated with, right? Like every part, right? Without a way, there should be an Empower Home way that we do something. There should be a Vanpool Properties way of how something is done. There should be a Fikes Group way of how something is done, right? Without a way, everyone will end up doing it differently, right? Without that form that gets submitted, right? That's part of how a way that Vanpool Properties turns in a contract or whatever, then everyone will end up doing it differently, right? And then what happens is results are inconsistent.
Which then you can't make decisions if the results, because there's nothing to go back to and say, where was this broken when everybody does it 8 different ways?
Yes. And like ultimately, when we talk about scaling or growth, what most entrepreneurs want to talk about is the results of that. Like results, like we're going to do more, we're going to sell more, well, if you want to do that, then you've got to define the way that you do things at your company, the way that you do things on your team, because results will be inconsistent if you don't. So if you want better results, then this is where you start, right? And then also training becomes impossible. Like if you don't have a way of doing it, right? Like Seychelle now knows what to train her team on about that form.
100%.
And explaining the why and explaining, well, when you turn it in, this is what happens next, right? And so it's impossible to train when you don't have a set way of doing it.
You're exactly right. Well, and it was, I mean, even us as, on the Empire Building podcast have these moments where we all go, oh, okay, that's a gap in our system, right? To the point even where the question was like, we hadn't gone over this form in a while, obviously, like exposing my own flaws in our systems right now. One of my agents was like, why does the ops team care about what direction the house faces? And I was like, they care because it impacts photos and the day and the time. And like if we're doing twilight, like when you're doing it, if it's morning or evening shots. And you can see the like wheels turning. And I was like, we are missing the why in the system. And it's causing headaches for the operations team because they're having to go get all this information on their own instead of you're already standing in front of the house. You can put it in what direction it faces, to like see where it goes.
Let's recap real quick because this has been so much gold everyone's dropping. And so I want to make sure our listeners are with us. Okay. So core concept number 1, right? You want to build a business that works without you, right? Core concept number 2, you must have a clear way that you do everything. Okay. And then core concept number 3 is what Seychelle, we're sort of talking about them together here, but right, every process has to have like step-by-step actions.
Right. And a person responsible for that, right?
Yes.
And then the understanding as to why that's important. And so every one of these steps needs to have, right, who's doing it, when does it happen, and then what success looks like on that. And the other aha I had around that was like rewarding the behavior you want to see. So when you have success in that step, you need to, even if it's you're building trust and consistency with it, with your team, celebrate those tiny wins so that they realize that the success is in that completion right there, that then is building that flywheel to replicate that system over and over again.
And most of this will be in your CRM, like depending on what kind of business you run. But the majority of our listeners, you're going to outline this in your CRM in an action plan or in plans or process, like depending on what your CRM calls them. But that's what you're going to do. You're going to build these action plans to say who does it, when it happens, and what success looks like in the action plan.
And one of the things that we implemented is we have it in the CRM, but we have what's called a training checklist, which to Seychelle's point, outlines every why of every step, that when you're doing it, you don't need to be seeing all of that necessarily, but it is outlined very clearly for, again, that ice cream truck situation. If somebody's got to step into it, they need to know every single why behind every single thing, or it's the training checklist to help get somebody up to speed if it's their first time doing it. And so we have 2, one in the
That's smart.
in the CRM that has the day-to-day operations of everything, who's it assigned to and all of that. But the why lives in this second document that anybody can see and look back to and say, why do we do that again? And so that was a hack that we learned.
When you have this set up, it also helps in so many ways. A few weeks ago, I was having a connect with my key leaders, and one of them was talking with me about how someone on their team or in their department wasn't living up to their role, and that they had dropped the ball on something multiple times, and that they've spoken to them about it, and it still hasn't gotten better. They keep forgetting to do XYZ, right? And I said, like, that's not normal for that person, like, for what I know about that person. And I don't believe that's normal for any human, like, to just truly, like, not care and just decide not to do something. I said, pull up the action plan. Like, has something changed? Is there not clarity that that's their job? Like, let's pull it up. So they pull it up, and they hadn't looked at it. And they're, like, looking down the checklist and okay, this person does this person does. And then they're like, it's not in here. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, it used to be in here, but it's not in here. And I said, so is it a person problem? Because you're coming to me saying that you want to let them go. And I'm like, or is it a process problem that you own, right? Ops leader. Okay. That you need to get it back, add it back in, and then let's see how they do, because they are forgetting because it's not in the action plan. Well, of course they're going to forget. Okay. And so, like, that's what happens. And when you have them set, then you can know, okay, is the person not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or is that not outlined for them to do? Right. And so it makes accountability a lot easier as well, which helps with clarity on what to do next.
I love that. And the other thing I will say for your operations people is when you are managing these processes in the CRM, the operations person cares about, right, correct and timeliness and risk, right? A really good operations person cares about getting it right and getting it all together. And when you have it in a CRM where they can pull it up and say, I have 57 tasks due today, or I have 75 tasks due today, what they can also do, which is a beautiful gift you can give your operations people, is they can shut their brain off when they know their tasks are done, because the system is built out to make sure that all the checks and balances are there. So they're not having those 2 a.m. wake ups wondering, did I get X done on X file? And that's a huge gift you can give for the longevity of your really good operations people.
All right, let's jump to the next core concept. Your team needs language, not just tasks. And I think as leaders, we're really good about that with our salespeople. We talk a lot about what do they need to be saying? How do you say this? How do you get a price reduction? And sometimes we forget that the support team needs that as well, that operations needs that just as much or maybe more than your sales team. And so conversation frameworks are crucial because they're confidence builders, because sometimes your operations team needs to influence something. They need to talk to somebody that is maybe not their natural strength or not their natural style. And you saying, here's what you need to say when you have this conversation with them. And to the things we've already talked about, it makes the client experience the same when they're being told the same thing in the same order. It is clear messaging. You know for sure the client is being communicated in a clear way or a direct way or whatever your way that you decide you want your customers to be communicated with. That's awesome. And to that training checklist that I was talking about, it has this for every conversation they're going to have with a client, which makes them onboard faster because all they have to do is pull up this piece of paper and read it to the customer.
So you're going to have the action plan, right? But then every task that has to do with communication is going to have a framework, like Tiffany is saying, to where they know what to say. Okay. So of course they're able to get launched faster because it's all spelled out for them, which makes it so easy.
Well, and I remember when I started scaling and having a system, and I didn't have a CRM that did all of this stuff, but Google came out with the what did they call them? Where you just click the button and that email populates.
Oh, yeah. The templates?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we had all of our communication in templates in Google so that we could just pop that same message at this point in the process to the next seller, and you just keep going. But having that language they're going to talk about. So you think about seller updates. You send those to as many sellers as you have. I know we had 14 go out on Monday. They all said the same thing with little holes filled in by the success team. The under contract updates. What are they being told? When are they being told that? What's that customer experience? How are they handling the common objections? Give them some help on these things. What are they saying to get ahead when they know a delay is coming? What are they saying to set expectations? All these things. If you slow down long enough, you can get them written down. And our rule was always, if you've said it more than twice, it needs to get written down. And we're going to have a way that you say it. So if it's an email, if you get asked this question twice in a week or in a month, that's going into this. How do we handle it? What does it look like?
That's brilliant. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, without those conversation frameworks, I think I've noticed that my people, they naturally default, right, to either emotions, their feelings about what to say or what not to say, or they just avoid them.
And that's, yes.
I mean, that's normally what they do is avoid. But sometimes it becomes their own emotions or their own thoughts on what should be said, right? So having a way that you say things, right, for your ops team is so important. I love that. Okay, next concept is you cannot scale what you cannot see. And it's so important for your business, especially for you as the leader. You are responsible for so many things, right? Revenue, conversion, the pipeline, profit, cash flow. Okay. So to scale your ops, and really for me, it's been a lot with our finance department. I read a book called Scaling Up a few years ago. It's a book I would highly recommend our listeners read. In that book, it says that the number one department that CEOs ignore is finance. It's the number one department that they hire last in, that they don't have enough people in. And Sarah Reynolds, you can mark my name on that. And it was a good wake-up call for me because I didn't realize the importance of having more people in that department. So I hired my first finance controller after I read that. And we really bulked that department up because cash flow is king in every business. I mean, it talks about in the book, but like everyone talks about Costco and how everyone goes to Costco and they think that the business is like bulk pricing or whatever. But what Costco is a cash flow king. Like that's literally what Costco is. It's a cash flow business because of the membership fees, right? And so like, but you need a dashboard that shows you at all times what is your revenue, right? That month. What's your revenue, projected revenue? You need to always be able to look at your conversion dashboard to know where in the conversion process you have gaps. Your pipeline, right? Like, so right now we have way too many coming soons and not enough actives. And so like we've been working a lot on that right now. But I know that because I have a dashboard that tells me that, right? And then of course, profit and cash flow. So, and with that, I think what's really important is, you know, you want to always be able to see where your business is coming from. So I get a weekly lead and appointment source report. So I can see, okay, what are the sources of my business this week? You know, what's converting at a higher rate right now? Maybe what's not converting? Where do you have leakage, right? And before, when I didn't have these dashboards, you know, I was just guessing. You're literally basing decisions off of like feelings and you can't scale that, right? And a lot of people think that this concept is more of like a leadership concept. And sure, it is to an extent, but this is an operations concept. Okay, because they're the ones that are making sure that the decision makers have what they need to make the decision. And so to scale, you need to have visibility into everything that you are doing, your business is doing.
I love that one. And leadership so much is fact finding. And so a great operations person loves to find the facts. And so by leading through facts and giving the right, like whether it's the ops person is on the leadership team or not, like finding those facts is what allows you to make reasonable, rational, and quick decisions. So I love that. It's great. And then as you're building this out, whether you're a team of 1 or you're a team of 50, scaling will break if communication systems are not in place with this. And what we mean by that is you might put these systems in place, but if we're not weekly having accountability meetings and weekly team meetings to then reinforce the systems we're putting in place, give the why, as I shared that we were missing earlier in one of our systems, and also touching base of what's working and not, right? Then we're missing the opportunity to get feedback, to tweak, to change, and to improve. And so the 4 pieces of communication that happen on our team, and I think a lot of our teams on a weekly basis, if you look at it, the first one would be a weekly team meeting, and then a weekly or biweekly leadership meeting, bi-monthly. Probably not bi-monthly leadership meeting, but at least once or twice a month, if not weekly, you need to be meeting with your leadership group and going through each of your metrics that you're measuring to improve. Then we have our one-to-ones. So I lead our agents one-to-ones, and that is our weekly accountability sessions where we're going over the core metrics, right? How many leads are they generating? How many calls are they making? How many contacts are they getting? How many people are they out showing or appointments are they going on? And then how many contracts are they writing? And when you're in a season where you're working to ramp things up, like Sarah was just talking about coming soons, looking at your leading indicators or the front of that pipeline really will help you move the needle to the back of the pipeline. So if you're working through that system, that can help a lot too.
I think what's important about this and what Seychelle is sharing here is that like a lot of people think meetings are just meetings, but they are an avenue for communication, and not just communication like from leader to team member, right? Or department, or it's also communication afterwards, right? Of like, okay, if you're in a one-on-one with an agent and you find an operations mistake, right? You then know what to communicate back because of that. And so like making sure that you have these set cadences is so important for scale because of communication. Like in Power Home now, we're almost 350 people. And we've got 2 executive leadership teams, because one for the service company, one for the real estate team. And if they don't communicate to each other, the whole system just breaks. Okay. And we have a whole avenue, like system for communication, and it has to do with these meetings that Seychelle's talking about. And so it's so critical. It's not just communication to the person you're meeting with. You want to think about like what decisions were made, what other departments does that affect, what other team members does that affect, and then making sure those go on those agendas to make sure that that's communicated with them as well.
I love that. Something we started doing on a quarterly basis was basically having a couple of pillars that we as a leadership team look at across the board. And the questions that we ask everyone to come to the table with at least 3 things in each pillar are, the first one is what's working really well in each of these categories, and then what's something we're missing or we need to improve. And the categories that we're looking at currently in the business are around getting the client. It's around communication inside and outside of the team, so internally and then with our clients. And then what knowledge base are we missing that we need to be learning about the market we're going into? And we're sitting down and like heavily reviewing each of those on a quarterly basis. And then that's helping us to build out our rocks for what we need to be implementing or improving. But I add in there like what's working really well, because I think sometimes we're so quick to jumping, I am at least, to jumping to like what hole do we need to fix? And sometimes it's actually doing more of what we're doing well. And so making sure we're adding that in the communication chain, I think helps reinforce that positive aspect of it too.
I think one other value of the meeting in a scaling situation is the culture. Like, you were the culture when you started because you were, like Sarah said, doing everything and touching everything. And so you were the culture keeper. But these meetings become about communication, and I would say also culture, because it's how you're going to know if the culture's changing. It's how you're going to keep the focus on what is important to you. And by you, I mean the company. Like, what is the important thing? So like one of the things that we do at the end of every team meeting is bam, 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 very quick fire. Everybody goes around and reminds each other why they're doing this. Like, what's one thing that you do? Because on our team, we're not just doing it for the paycheck. Like, what's the other reason? And when we stopped doing that and we were just having meetings and people weren't meeting with me one-on-one anymore and I wasn't asking those really pointed questions, we started hiring differently. The people on the team were different, and we weren't focused on that part of our culture, and that changed in our team. And so meetings can be the culture keeper as well, which is a huge, important piece.
Yeah.
Okay, another core idea. Most people build systems for today and then immediately outgrow them when they work. And that's great. You built a system, but here's how you can plus it the next time. Go ahead and think about your systems for the growth they're going to create. So you think, if we doubled our volume, would this still work? You know, I know some people go super extreme. What was that? Like 10 times. If it was 10 times, would this work? Because you need to build with that size you're going to become in mind. So that's the way things are automated, the delegation. And to Sarah's point, the like simplicity of how we're going to handle everything. We're not going to have 50 ways. When you had 5 listings, you could have 5 ways that they launched to market. But when you have 50 listings, no way can you do it. So always saying, okay, it's not about what's working now. Stop asking that question, or start there, but then don't write it down until you say, what would work when we double it?
The biggest mistake that we made when we were building so many of our systems, right, was we built them for Virginia. So that's the state that we first started in, right? And now everything that we do, I ask, like, will this work in Texas? Will this work in Colorado? Will this work in Georgia? Will this work? Like, and if it doesn't, not for us, right? And so like even lead gen pillars, right? Like systems and processes for lead generation. Like that's so smart, Tiffany, of like, you got to think of the future, right? What's your mission? Where are you going? What's the vision? And making sure that you're not putting something in place that you're going to have to redo, right? And so build it now for where you're going.
I love that. Well, and, you know, like a key truth that we're talking about here is that the act of your business scaling isn't what breaks businesses. It's actually the lack of the clear systems that does. And so, you know, if you're letting your systems determine your ceiling, that's the level you're going to grow to, and then you're going to have to break it down and build it bigger again. And so, if you're building and both of these amazing women are telling you, right, think bigger, ask bigger questions, right, push yourself to build something bigger than what's comfortable for you right now in a system, you're going to thank yourself on the back end so much for that. And I think the other piece to remember too is if your business is only working when you're working, you don't have a business yet, you have a job.
Yep. Okay, so our core concepts for scaling your back end ops team and systems is first, stop building a business that you work in. You got to build systems that work without you, right? You got to have a clear way to do everything. Every process needs to have a step-by-step action. Who's doing them? When are they supposed to be done, right? Your ops team needs their language as well, not just tasks, right? So as Tiffany said, like having those conversation frameworks for your ops team, and then making sure that you have those dashboards, right? For the most important numbers for you to see as you grow. And then that communication framework of making sure that you have a communication system through those meetings, making sure you're communicating both up, down, sideways, right? And then building systems that will grow with you, right? You don't need 100 systems, right? You just need the right ones for your business, for your vision, for your mission. And what we want to encourage you today in your homework for today's episode is start with one area. What is the area that frustrated you the most last week in your business? What's the area right now today that feels most chaotic for you?
I know the answer to that. Like that came into every listener's head. No, like yes. When you say, what was the thing that annoyed you? Something popped in mine. I'm sure it popped in yours, Seychelle. Listener, whatever popped in your head, do that one.
Yes. So we want you to identify one process that's not consistent, that is leading to frustration, that's leading to annoyance, right? Document it, assign ownership, and add that conversation framework. And I'm telling you, one at a time, oh my goodness, one day you'll look up and you have that real business like Seychelle talked about. So get out there. Let's build systems, not just opportunities or ideas, okay? Let's build a big business and an even bigger life. Hope you have a great week. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not Keller Williams Realty LLC and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.